In this video, I'll talk about step one of the PyVC protocol. That is, identifying your scope, context, and criteria. The first step is clearly indicated on the flowchart. In PyVC, whenever you are in doubt, return to the flowchart. The map will always tell you where you are in the assessment and the things that you need to be doing at that stage, and furthermore, where to get additional guidance within the protocol itself. This session covers the scope, context, and criteria, how scope, context, and criteria help us establish our objectives, and why setting objectives is so important. When we set the objectives, we're providing a roadmap for our project. Where are we trying to go? How well are we doing? What do we need to do next time? It's set by our decision makers, and it can be modified during the assessment. While not ideal, this does happen from time to time, so this should be viewed as an iterative process. The pillars of the objectives are the scope, context, and criteria. Within scope, we define the outcomes, timing, techniques, and resources we're going to use in our assessment. We ask questions like, why are we doing this assessment? What does success look like? Where are we doing it? What's the location? What stuff is in, what stuff is out? What's the time horizon? And what methodologies are we using? And do we have the resources to do that, or do we need to go get additional resources? When we define context, we're deciding whether the assessment is looking more inward or outward. Context defines focus. If this assessment is more inward, we look at only the risks that we have direct control over. If it's more outward, we are thinking about our influence on entities outside of our organization. We're maybe thinking about socioeconomic impacts, much broader view of the assessment situation. So if we're thinking internally, what sorts of things could affect our risk? So we're looking at governance, vision, missions, and values, organizational structure, our roles and responsibilities, our strategy, objectives, and policies, the organizational culture, and our standards and guidelines. If we're looking externally, we're thinking about drivers and trends, international, national, regional, local factors. Who are our external stakeholders? What relationships, perceptions, values, needs, and expectations do we need to consider? And what sort of contractual relationships do we have? What networks and interdependencies are we facing? And finally, we have to figure out how we're going to measure risk. That is the criteria for the assessment. When we're thinking about criteria, we think about things like the organization's risk appetite, the level of uncertainty it's willing to bear, performance expectations, consequence scoring and benchmarks, likelihood scoring and benchmarks, the definitions of risk. What is high? What is medium? What is low risk? The objectives drive our success. Scope, context, and criteria define our objectives, set the tone for the assessment, establish our boundaries, and define success. So the key points for this video are that our objectives are based on scope, context, and criteria. They set the boundaries, conditions, and metrics for the work that we are doing. And ultimately, they set the foundation for our success.